Yeah, there's a great variety in the launch lineup. Looking back at the 40-some year history of video games, do you think there's any traditional genres or game types that don't work in VR?
The interesting thing about VR is if you take VR from a pure scientific standpoint, it's virtual reality. So it isn't necessarily something different. It's kind of, it can encompass anything. And what I mean by that is we have Xbox Play inside VR, right? So you can sit on a virtual sofa and play on a virtual TV an Xbox game streaming from somewhere in your house. We know Call of Duty is a fantastic game. We know Grand Theft Auto is a game. I'm playing Far Cry Primal right now. It's a fantastic game. We know Division is fantastic. These are fantastic titles. There's no reason why that game has to change or has to go away. There are reasons why it plays better in VR. I can give you a few of them. Far Cry Primal, which is a 2D game, would be really cool if it was 3D. And I don't mean the 3D that you see in theaters. I mean the 3D where if I go like that, I'd look around somebody in front of me and see behind them. It's like instead of a window into a 2D world, it's a window into a 3D world where I can look around. Maybe the TV isn't rectangular. Maybe the TV curves and it's more like a giant half circle or some sort of weird thing in front of me. The reason those games don't translate to VR is that the motion can make you feel uncomfortable. But there is a TV in the VR world that's comfortable, so there's probably something better than a TV in the VR world that doesn't quite get to true 360 VR that's comfortable. And so maybe those games don't change at all. They just improve, and they improve by going into VR, which gives them capabilities you couldn't find in a TV. If someone throws a club at me, why can't it come out of the TV and go by my head? Like, that's totally fine in VR. That's not gonna make you uncomfortable. It's just when you're in a first-person game and you throw the grappling hook and it slams you against the wall and you're climbing up and the club hits you in the face, all of that stuff won't work. It'll make you feel like you're on a roller coaster after 20 drinks, but it'd be fine if it was on this virtual television. So I don't think anything goes away. I think everything gets better, and virtual reality is that medium that brings its own new games, but also brings old games to the future.
Adam, Ted, do you agree? Is there anything you've thought of that you're like, I don't think that would really work in VR?
Well, I mean, our first conversation, Jason's and my first conversations were about third-person action games. And we were both looking at each other asking, do you think this will work? And the answer was, we don't know. And we had to try it. And I think that's going to have to be the approach for everybody who asks exactly the same question. What won't work? Well, we really don't know until we actually get in there and start working with it and discover the rules that have to be modified for VR. But I think in the process of determining what those rules are, we discover a lot of new cool stuff that we would have never tried in more traditional approaches to games.
I think to add to that, I would also say that I think it's I think it's a little dangerous to say what the rules of VR are right now.
Yeah.
Like, I was actually going to give a talk about this at GDC this year, but I couldn't do it. And I see a lot of articles and people saying these are the rules of VR and how you have to make stuff. And I think it would be better to call them guidelines, right? Because I think once you start saying this doesn't work, we can't make this kind of game, then we're hurting everything.
Yeah, right? And I didn't mean to say rules, because
no,
that could be a bad word, but I think that's a really good point that we've learned at Insomniac. As we've been developing VR, our perception of VR and the guidelines that we expected to use at first have changed, given the acclimatization that we have experienced while playing more and more VR. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's really, you've shared with us studies that Oculus has done on how people's reaction to cameras and movement in VR actually ends up changing based on what they've experienced over a period of time.
Right, like for an example, in Adrift, there's many, many doors that you have to open in the game. And actually through working with Oculus, we found out that I had no idea that simulation sickness is cumulative. I had no idea. And we had just a little teeny tiny animation in first person on the door when you kind of open it like this. It really wasn't a big deal and nobody really complained about it. But we just took it out and all the doors in VR just kind of auto open for you. And we just had no idea about that stuff and kind of throwing the rules are out is, I think, really, really important for for people making the games.
You have to throw the rules out, but be cognizant of
Right.
the end game. The end game
Yeah.
is to make the most comfortable experience you can. And simulator sickness is really not that scary. It's just like
Yeah, it's-
driving in the back of a car, looking at a book on a winding street. Your
Yeah.
eyes see nothing moving. Your inner ear says, "I'm winding." Your brain doesn't know who to believe, and that creates an. This is the opposite. You're on a roller coaster. Your eyes believe you're on a roller coaster. Your inner ear is like, "I'm not moving," and that creates the same issue. So avoiding things that cause that problem in general is very good, but around the edges, there are certain things that work.